All right. Hey, everybody. I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to jump on in and get to talking a little bit about mobile development and delivery at scale. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Campagna. I'm the mobile dev and delivery manager over here at FIS. And what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to talk a little bit first about who I am, uh, and then what FIS was doing prior to our recent transformation that we just went through. I'm going to talk about sort of what came next, what prompted us to start going through a bit of a transformation, and then talk about how we started with a solid foundation. We then tried to automate everything that we could reasonably automate, um, and then making things easy up front at the end of your process is requiring a lot of upfront work. Talk a little bit about that. And then talk about what was the net effect of our overall transformation. I think that getting to what we've seen as positive results is a fun and great thing to be able to look at. So let's jump right in. So, who am I? I'm the development lead over here at FIS for mobile. I've been doing it for about 12 years now. So I've seen a lot of change in the industry. And what my team does is we make a white label mobile banking app that supports 800 ish financial institutions across the United States. So obviously, that's quite the undertaking when we're talking about a mobile app. There's lots of different moving pieces there to make that uh, work. So what we had, unfortunately, was really monolithic apps written on native code. We had a lot of different features because when you're talking about mobile banking, there's a lot of different things that you can do. And we had a lot of customizations that were done not only at build time but also at runtime. So you're trying to manage a lot of change that can happen not only when you're submitting apps but also when you are just running apps live in production. Um, so then we also, when we're trying to build them, when you're thinking about how we're actually building that many mobile apps, you're thinking 800 apps on iOS and on Android. So you have 1,600 apps that you need to generate just to do one app update. It was run on 7 corporate Mac Minis. We did it all through Jenkins. Um, it was just cumbersome and hard to manage. Um, and then we have to also rely on multiple different teams who are all doing different things. So we're having build, distribution, and delivery. They're all separate parts of the company because they were all decoupled. Um, we had a corporate management team that was running all those Mac Minis. We had the development team that was developing the solutions, and then we had a implementations team that was doing all of the delivery aspects. So you can just imagine how many handoffs that you have as a result of that, especially when you're talking about the scale that we're talking about. Um, so a general app update at FIS was somewhere in the realm of 3 to 6 months after we were done with development. So the actual delivery process was at least a half a year just to get one app update out. So as you can imagine, you can't really do very much in that type of a space. You have to be very monolithic. You have to be very waterfall. You can't have frequent app updates because you just can't get them to your clients quickly and easily. Um, so taking all of these struggles into account, we sort of had to ask ourselves, what do you do? Because you can't keep on operating in that space, right? You can't keep on going with only being able to give your clients one, maybe two, if you're lucky, app updates a year, not in the way that mobile apps work. We need to be more frequent. We need to have better processes. So the first thing that we did is we sort of sat down and said, all right, well, what do we want to accomplish? Right. You got to start thinking first about where you want to go so that way you can then direct yourself in the right way. Um, so we started by saying, if we want to do this, we got to make it really easy at the end. We got to make it so that that delivery process becomes really easy because we want to make it so that we can do multiple app updates a year. We want to make it so that we can do them without our clients having any sort of pain points. We want to make it so that we don't have all of these manual processes. So what we needed to do was really focus and say we want to speed up our development cycle. We need to speed up our delivery process. And we need to do that with quality, right? You got to have really high quality when you're doing that. Because if you're doing frequent releases and you're doing it with low quality, then your clients start to distrust you. Um, and a part of that was eliminating manual handoffs and people intervention. Um, And so, we had to come up with a plan, and obviously, the first part of the plan is we're gonna have to spend some money, right? But money spent up front when it comes to development tends to be cheaper than when you spend it later. So what we did was explain how much money we'd been spending over the past few years, comparing it with the investment that we were asking for, and then the delivery of what we were going to provide with that estimate, as opposed to what had been delivered with previous budgets in the past. Um, and that sort of gets us to where we wanted to start. So we started with a solid foundation. We had these two native code bases. They were mixes of Kotlin and Java, and then mixes of Objective C and Swift, and they were hard to manage because you needed very specific skill sets. The rest of our company runs on Angular, so what we did was we said, "Hey, let's start by saying let's get some common skill sets going. We can build hybrid mobile apps using Angular, Ionic, and Capacitor, and that way we can have one code base that we manage that makes it so that we can still develop multiple apps." And then we also can share those skill sets and be able to get people from other parts of the company to be able to come in and work on our code without it being really cumbersome. Um, and then we wanted to build a shared mobile framework. So really, basically building an SDK to build mobile apps. Because when one of the people on my team gave me the best analogy, which is that when you're building a website, you're building it within a browser. When you're building a mobile app, you're essentially building your app and the browser that it goes in. So you're still sort of building a container as well as building, the actual functionality that you want to provide for your end users. So we wanted to build a common container that could be used not just by my team, but by anyone who wants to build any mobile app within the organization. Um, and then what we really wanted to make sure of was that because we had this really monolithic app today, we wanted to build an app that was less monolithic and more modular. So that really relied on the idea of building your features and having them be compiled sets of code that we then sort of put together like Legos um, in the end. So that way we have really solid code that is of high quality. And then automating as much as we can, making it so that our infrastructure is code, right? So really utilizing the tools that were available to us, and some tools that we had to argue for quite a while to get them to be available to us, so that we could, actually get to a more automated way of working. Rather than having manual builds or one time a night builds that would often fail, we can move to builds that are constantly running. Um, we have we run builds very, very frequently now, as opposed to in the past where they were a very cumbersome aspect of our lives. Let me go a little bit more into how we actually did that. So using Bitrise, we had to argue for quite a while to utilize Bitrise and to be able to get a license for it. Um, but it was really one of the cornerstones of what we wanted to do, because we needed to be able to build apps constantly and we needed to be able to compile code constantly. And we didn't have that ability when you're running off of these corporate managed machines, because we had these long SLAs. We couldn't get the right teams together, because when you have distributed teams and you have teams that are across multiple different groups, you just end up having different priorities. So what we needed was we needed something that was stable and managed and something that we could use easily. So that way, what we would do is we would actually build features, compile those features. They then get stored in our corporate artifactory, and then we can have them be compiled together when we actually need to make a client application. So when we're actually giving it to one of our clients. So just to give an example of what some of these features look like, right? So it's when you're in a banking app, you have a feature that is looking at your account listing and your account balances and your account details. That'd be one feature that we compile. I then compare that with a bunch of different features based on whatever my bank uh, actually has available to me. So whether that's being able to transfer money, bill payment, or some other cooler features that are out there that are less sort of the norm, right? So we could do things like a chat bot, or we could add in other things just based on what that client is contracting with us. So making it so that these are really modular and we can just have an app built with n number of features that have already been compiled and have solid code behind them. So part of that is making sure that we automate, because if you look at this list, this is all of our Bitrise steps that we use as a part of each one of our different types of pipelines. So we have frameworks, which are basically like the underpinning of the app. That's the base, that SDK that we're sort of developing. And then we have features, that's sort of end user features, something a person is going to interact with. Um, and then integration pipelines, which are where we can go and test building multiple features together. And then client pipelines, which are what we actually do to deliver to app stores. All of these steps are things that in the past would be a manual aspect of our lives, right? We had to manually go in and run the builds. We had to then push code to different places. We had to go and run scans manually ourselves. All of that is now automated for us through Bitrise steps that we put into our build process. Um, it it makes it so that we can go in and say you can't actually finish a build if we go in and see that we have errors in our code, or if we see that we aren't passing all of the quality gates that we know we need to pass in order to produce quality code. Um, as a result of all of that, we get a lot more time to actually spend doing our jobs of development rather than spending all of our time just manually running steps. We get to go through and actually create a build, and it does all of this for us and lets us know whether or not we've done it correctly. Now, just talking about the client pipelines very specifically, um, the deployment to the stores, being able to automate that using Fastlane steps. In the past, what we have is we have an actual team of people that is all their job is upgrading mobile apps. So they go through and they talk to clients, make sure that they have the right, signing signatures and everything like that they need. They go in and make sure that they can go and upload the apps for the clients. It is an incredibly manual, incredibly time consuming job that these people need to go through and do. We can now move them off of that and have them go and do revenue generating work as opposed to just manual updates of their apps. Because now what happens is, instead of us needing to build an app, that app gets stored to some file system within FIS. Then the implementations person needs to go in and grab that file. Then they need to log into uh, an Apple and a Google account, upload that file, go and check that it actually uploaded properly, go and put in some manual steps there, make sure that everything is all up to date. Instead of having to do all of that, literally we can push a button and it'll do all of that for us and push the app directly to the store. So we went from a manual process that would take someone a couple of days to do all of the steps, because that's just how long it took, to being able to push a button, have an app in store, and do all of those steps in about 10 minutes. Just absolutely revolutionizing the way that we operate and work on a day-to-day basis. So all of this automation is just incredibly helpful and made our lives significantly better. It takes some time for you to set all this up front and decide what you want to do. But then once you have it in there, it just changes the entire way that we operate. So let's talk a little bit about results, right? So through all of this, it's just dramatically changed the way that we operate, right? So again, building, distributing, and deploying, it all now comes through one team and one process, as opposed to being three separate teams that all have to do different pieces of work. We just compressed all of it. It's going to make it so that we can do a rollout to all of our banks, all of our clients, instead of it taking 6 months and being incredibly manual and needing to have a dedicated team to do it. We can do it in about a week, maybe less, depending on how quickly we want to roll it out. Um, we also get higher quality across the board, because our previous process didn't have quality gates built in. We had to go and run scans manually and then go and check and see whether or not we were passing all of them. Now we just set up a quality gate and said, hey, you got to get to a certain level of quality before you can even get a build to go. Um, and as a result, our quality is just much better. um, just as an example, we've had fewer uh, issues reported by our banks in this complete rewrite of our applications, complete replatforming of our applications fewer complaints in that than a minor release that we would do on our previous platform. It boggles my mind how much just having that as a thing that you're getting in your pipeline to block the code from going out changes the actual end user experience because you know right now our clients whenever we give them a new release they want to test it and they want to test it thoroughly because of the fact that we didn't used to have quality gates so our quality was not always as high as it should have been. They're going through and testing our new app now and they are honestly telling us that it we're fixing things too quickly and we're delivering fixes too fast for them to even go and keep up with, which is a great problem to have. Um, and then on top of that, we just get a better developer experience. We had a lot of people who just were not pleased with the way that we were operating. It was very cumbersome for them. But now that we have this higher quality build infrastructure, it focuses developers on doing what they do, which is developing code. Um, you know, and part of it is that we wanted to give someone all of our team something fun to do. And working on new code is fun. And being able to efficiently use it and having all the tools to do what you need to do makes it even more fun. So trying to make it so that we're not just um, creating a better experience for our clients, but also creating a better experience within our company in order to make it so that people actually um, want to develop code here and want to continue working with us. Um, and the really cool thing that we've seen that is part of what makes me really happy is that FIS is a very big company. We have a lot of different organizations. We are really disparate. Um, and one of the things that we've found as we've been going through this journey is that we've been sort of evangelizing the work that we're doing, and we've met a lot of people across the organization who have a mobile app within their group, but don't have a subject matter expert who knows anything about mobile. So they have this app that they are technically supporting, but they don't know how to support it. And what we've been able to do is provide them with tools, not just our own knowledge, but then also being able to provide them with a thing like Bitrise because we're a PC based organization. So if another group has a iOS app, but they're all on PCs, they have no way of even generating a build. So we were able to provide them with access to Bitrise to allow them to actually support their own products. And then also, a part of what we're developing is with that SDK, we can provide a base for groups that don't have a mobile app but would like to. If someone wants to be able to create a mobile app, we are making it so that they can do that easily and effectively, and then have a process by which they can distribute it easily and effectively as well. So the power of being able to go in and think about these things, starting off with where you want to go and what problems you want to solve, and then finding the right tools to solve them. It has been a really eye opening experience and a really a positive experience across the board, not only for my team but for our organization as a whole. So that's really the content that I wanted to go over. I wanted to make sure I left some time so that we could do Q&A if anyone has any questions. I don't see any in the chat yet, but if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them, talk about our journey and how we got to where we are. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions come through. Oh, here we go. I got one. So I got one question that says, "How large was the team that supported the migration?" So the team has been it sort of varied in the size that it's been across the total time that we've been doing this. We started off with a team that was around 200 people. We're down to about 120 now. Um, so overall, the that's been mixes of teams that have been doing both frameworks, so basically building out that SDK, and then teams that are building out those end user features. And we did have them separated completely so that we had different charters and different use cases for both of them, because we're building a platform and you're building that foundation. You have people who are able to be focused on it. We tried having there be some intermingling, and it didn't really work as well, because then people's focus got shifted, because whenever you're in a large organization, they're going to get shifted more towards delivery of end user features than delivery of infrastructure. So that was definitely a thing that we had to deal with and work around. All right, cool. Well, hey, if there are any other questions, people can always reach out to me after. You can email me at scott.campagna@fisglobal.com. Um, and I'm happy to answer any questions or work with anybody. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can always go and grab me there. And if you ever have anything that you want to talk about, just I hope that it came across, but I love talking about mobile development. I love talking about how I can get teams to be effective and work in a positive way. So if anyone ever wants to chat, just feel free to reach out to me.